I call it, there's no peer around the world. 世界無敵 in Cantonese, okay? If you look at those two, okay? So it's still true. It's even more true today. Now, of course, there are challenges. Hong Kong and Great Barrier, there's still two systems. There's a border, whether it's psychological or real, is still there. But in particular, the Western view of Hong Kong has changed. You know, I talk to many people, and they think there's no difference between Hong Kong and the rest of, mainland China. And this is a major challenge for Hong Kong, I think, you have to go out. And there's competition for Hong Kong, Shanghai and Singapore and so on. Now, the last one I want to say is the opportunities. Every challenge has opportunities, okay? Hong Kong has diversified from finance, real estate, tourism, and so on. Last week, I was in Hong Kong, this One Earth Summit, very global, sustainability, great potential for Hong Kong.
喺睇片之前，大家記得分享、讚好同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁你就唔會錯過我哋嘅最新影片。
I'm so happy to be back in Hong Kong. Every chance I got, I try to come back. So I chosen this title. I hope it's relevant. So basically, it's about new RDI. RDI is R&D and innovation. So I think it's relevant to this conference. And also higher education development in Saudi Arabia, where I think I'm probably the only one in the audience who's living in Saudi Arabia, and also the university KAUST's role. So that's what I plan to do. Okay, so what gives me the credibility to speak on this, other than I live there and work in Saudi Arabia? So in addition, I want to draw your attention to the second bullet on the right. So the ecosystem in Saudi Arabia is a little different. So just because of either me as president of KAUST, and KAUST is more unique in Saudi Arabia than, let's say, HKUST is in Hong Kong. Okay, so the system is different. Maybe because of my background, I serve on a lot of committees and boards. Oops. I serve on a lot of committees and boards in Saudi Arabia. In particular, most relevant to this talk is what is called the Supreme Committee on RDI. So this is a new thing. I will say a little bit more about that. And for example, FII Institute, with the Future Investment Institute, it just held its priority summit in December, hosted by the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, for example. So that's another one. I'm on the board. And then you have AI Authority, the SDAIA, SDAIA, and CAX is the National Lab for Saudi Arabia. KFUPM is the MIT of Saudi Arabia. I'm on its advisory board. And NEOM, you learn about the new future city. In fact, they're coming to Hong Kong later this month, I understand, on the roadshow. And other things, SUSTEC, I know the SUSTEC representative here. So I'm still on the advisory, international advisory board. I'm on Skolkovo, which is Russia. So I've been there for almost 10 years on this board. Then before that, of course, I was in the US most of my career. I was born in Hong Kong. So I know Hong Kong a bit, and I was the president of HKUST. So that's my background. So I hope my perspective, while unique, hopefully will have some credibility when I talk about this. My own background is in computer science. So if I were not president, I would be doing AI, okay? I'm glad I'm not doing AI at this point, okay? The thing on the left was in 2022 in the local Saudi English language newspaper, they asked me to write something to predict basically innovation and science technology in the future. So I don't want to go through that, but that's the idea. So there's a national platform for me. So let me step back, because this is an innovation and technology summit. The gist of this slide is it's very easy to destroy an innovation system, and very difficult to build it up, as you know, especially in Hong Kong. Of course, you can destroy it by underfunding, but most important is not finding and nurturing the talent and changing the culture. That's the most important thing, okay? Now, what's the role of the university? I think, again, the role of the university is actually talent. The university nurtures the next generation of talent. Of course, we do R&D and innovation. We have startups, so we should nurture that. But those are, you know, by chance, right? You start up these things, and hopefully some of them are successful. And they leave home. It's like your children. You don't always nurture them to when they become a unicorn, okay? So now here's a big picture in R&D. Some of you probably seen this slide. So the picture on the left is in 2011. It shows basically the horizontal axis is the percentage of GDP or good that a country spends on RDI. And the vertical axis is the percentage of the population in the RDI ecosystem. And the one on the right is 10 years later, 2021. That's the latest one we have. So if you look there, first of all, you wonder where Saudi Arabia is. Saudi Arabia, on the one on the left, you cannot even find it. It's sort of in the bottom left corner. It's a very small dot, okay? So on the right, it's a little bit moved to the right. So in terms of percentage, but it's still very low. Saudi Arabia today spends about 0.8%. Okay, probably roughly the same as Hong Kong. Maybe Hong Kong has increased a bit. But the percentage of the human capital is still relatively low, you see. But you see the big bubble, the blue one is the US. And you see the green bubble, a little bit further down is China, the green one. You see China is still relatively low on the vertical axis, but has gone way to the right in this last 10 years. So the investment has gone up a lot. Now the singularity here, if you look at on the far right, that little green bubble on the right is South Korea. So South Korea, as you know, has invested heavily in R&D. So this is where the world is making their own plan, the countries. Every country worries about RDI. They do it in their own way. It depends on the trade-off, the resources, how much they can invest. So I mentioned about the RDI ecosystem in Saudi Arabia. So on the right is the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS, usually referred to. Maybe just over a year ago, he announced, as you see in the title, Saudi Arabia outlines new plan for RDI. And in particular, the percentage of GDP that the country will invest in RDI will go from about 0.8% to 2.5% by 2040. Now, that's a huge increase. That's like 4 times, right? And it's setting up what they call an RDI authority. An authority is it's sort of the British system, if I understand. So it's like setting up an NSF and NIH to do the funding, for example. It's gearing up. And it's chosen 4 areas, so it's not trying to spread it thin. So these 4 areas you see is health and wellness, the second bullet, sustainability and essential resources, which includes water. There's no fresh water really in Saudi Arabia. And food, how do you grow food? Third one is energy, which is very natural, and industrial leadership. And the fourth one is more for the future, economy of the future. So this is selected to be the 4 areas. In fact, because I was on this committee, I was in charge of the second bullet, sustainability and essential resources. And I can tell you, I have a small committee of about 4 people, and our recommendation is adopted as is. So this is really bottom up in some sense, top down in direction, but bottom up in the details. Now the Ministry of Education, I promised to say a word about higher education. You might surprise most of you. You probably never heard of this. The Ministry of Education, oh, it's not here, but okay. So I will have something that surprise you. But the Ministry of Education is, before, it's probably more like in mainland China. The university, most of them are part of the Ministry of Education, 教育部. So that's in Saudi Arabia. But it's now changing. The Ministry of Education trying to make the university more independent, have them set up their own board, raise their own endowment money. So this is happening. The second thing is co-ed. Because of the religious background, most of the university gender segregated, but it's changing in the last few years. Okay, so KFUPM, the university which I'm on the advisory board, admitted the first class of students maybe 3 years ago. So for example, and I met them. And these are top students. The fourth bullet, as you know, Saudi Arabia is big in oil and gas, but it knows, maybe 10 years ago, it knows the oil may run out, but today the concern is the demand for oil may go down. Everybody is going about what's called the energy transition. So Saudi Arabia is mentioning, there's no more stark example than, on the one hand, Saudi Arabia has Aramco, which is the biggest oil company in the world, And on the other hand, you have NEOM, which is the new future city, which is no carbon. They coexist in Saudi Arabia. In fact, NEOM, I mentioned, they will be visiting Hong Kong or China later this month. They're doing their roadshow, for example. So if you have a chance, maybe you can talk to them. The other thing is, 10 years ago, when I first went to Saudi Arabia, all the cars are basically big SUVs, okay? The gas is very, very cheap. Today, Saudi Arabia are trying to build electrical vehicle industry. Lucid is manufacturing there. Saudi Arabia built its own EV brand called Seer, for example. So this is actually happening. It seems a contradiction, but it's happening at the same time. Just 2 weeks ago, Saudi Arabia announced we'll be making a huge investment, $40 billion in AI. I don't know exactly what is going to happen, but that's the biggest investment in AI, okay, almost anywhere in the world by a government. Semiconductors, obviously, is of interest to every country, so I don't have to emphasize on that. So now coming a little bit on cows, I have to hurry, I have 5 minutes, we just announced 6 months ago a plan called Accelerating Impact. So the Crown Prince, MBS, is our chairman, so he actually announced it. So basically, the idea is that we need to accelerate our impact. We've been making impact. We want to align with the 4 RDI priority of the country, those that are listed there. We have to supercharge our innovation ecosystem. We want to commercialize our research more urgently. And we need to see partnership. Those are the 2 themes, right, of this conference. We're doing also a lot of national initiative. I don't have time to go into that. We're building one of the world's largest coral reef garden in the world. It's up in NEOM. We're doing carbon capture at the industrial plant. This is not just in the lab. And we're forming a VC. So it's $200 million over 5 years. So this is our VC. We want to fund our own startup, but also other startups from Hong Kong, for example, from anywhere in the world. If you come to Saudi Arabia and have impact in the local economy. In fact, the headquarters is in Palo Alto, for example. So these, major initiative is not in a vacuum. It has to make global sense, but it also has to address Saudi Arabia's needs. So if you look at the first column, you see Saudi Arabia has basically no fresh water. Okay, so I don't have to expand on that. Climate is a big problem. For every degree increasing the temperature, it affects Saudi Arabia a lot more than it affects other more temperate regions. It's going through the energy transition. Health is a big thing since the pandemic especially, but Saudi Arabia has a lot of genetic special challenges, like diabetics is a big challenge. If it goes to future economy, AI, cybersecurity, space. Saudi Arabia has a space program. So these 4 RDI priorities not by selected at random. And cows, if you look at the last column, we've been doing this thing from day 1. So we are perfectly aligned with this, but we have to step up. We have to make it more, produce results more in a hurry. Another aspect of cows is that we are small. For example, we don't have academic departments, no departments. We don't have undergraduates. So it should be easier to do interdisciplinary integrated research, which we are trying to do. Second is that we want to do things at scale. So some of these projects I mentioned are at scale, not just in the laboratories. So here are a few examples. I don't have time to go into that, but you see. So here are some notable startups. Maybe I just briefly mention about the first 2. Red Sea Farm is a spin-off from 2 faculty from cows. And they use seawater to grow food, to grow crop. There's no fresh water. So there's a lot of science behind it. Now they are exporting this technology to around the world. The second one is actually most interesting to me. It's called Climatecrete. So climate, Crete is concrete. Saudi Arabia has a lot of sand, more sand than oil. But you cannot use Saudi desert sand to build concrete. So Saudi Arabia imports several $100 million a year of sand to build things. Because the sand in the desert is too eroded. They're too smooth. So what these faculty do is they capture the carbon from the air, attach them to the sand, and now they can build concrete. So it's being done now. There's a startup. So, Saudi Arabia will be exporting sand in the future, hopefully. So the relationship between Saudi Arabia and China has been increasing. So China is the largest trading partner with all the countries in the Gulf region, okay? Largest customer of oil of Saudi Aramco. And of course, Saudi Arabia needs infrastructure. They're building all kinds of big infrastructure. It needs advanced technology and above all talents. And China needs new market and also investment. So this is actually a good match. There are a lot of things that happened just in the last year and a half, and those I don't want to go through all of them. But of course, the most important is President Xi Jinping visited just over a year ago, and a lot of things have changed. Immediately after that, the Hong Kong chief executive took a delegation of about 60 people to visit. So I showed the picture there. You know, his John Lee is on the left, I'm on the right, and the one in the middle is the Minister of Investment of Saudi Arabia. So, you know, they were there. Lots of things you can see. Oops, what happened? I have maybe 2 more slides. Okay, so, yeah. So I want to finish by 2 slides, okay? 1 minute, okay. So one is, because this is the Greater Bay Area organization is doing that, I want to mention something about the Bay Area. So this one slide I borrowed from Professor Li Jiexiang, some of you know, but I updated it. So, you know, these are the 4 major areas. Hong Kong is on the bottom right, in the Greater Bay Area here. We have the largest number of top-ranked universities. Someone mentioned that. I think Jeffrey C. mentions that. In terms of GDP, in terms of population, it is among the biggest. In fact, Silicon Valley is actually not the biggest. Okay, so so this is what the Great Bay Area is about. Okay, so here's the last slide. This is my personal view. So hopefully I get through a few bullets. First bullet. You know, people have been talking about Greater Bay Area for almost 30 years. It was first proposed by Wu Jiawei in 1997, if I remember. So I had written articles about this when I was in Hong Kong. In fact, 2 articles on the right. You know, I have a regular column. The one on the top is about the Hotou, you know, a river loop. The bottom right is actually another 20 years. I must have written it in 2017. It's 20 years after that. I say, do we have to wait another 20 years? Well, now we are 7 years after 2017. But I'm seeing that recently there's more action, you know, in Hong Kong, developing the northern metropolis area. So there's more determination, but hopefully not another 20 years. But lots of things have changed. I have visited the Great Bay Area many times, sometimes with the government, sometimes on my own. Now, HKUST has campuses in Guangzhou. Most of the university in Hong Kong now have something to do with it. I visited Chinese University in Shenzhen, the Hong Kong U Hospital in Shenzhen. So that's very good, okay? But that's not enough, okay? One thing I did at CAUSA, I set up an innovation hub in Shenzhen. So this was started just a few months ago, okay? So the idea is to bring the CAUS people from Saudi Arabia to go to Shenzhen, okay, to learn about the ecosystem. You cannot teach this on paper. You have to go there. Okay, that's the idea. So there are complementary strengths. I've written about this between Hong Kong and even Shenzhen, never mind the rest of Bay Area. I think if you take the advantages of Hong Kong, which is listed here, and the advantages of Shenzhen only, I call it, there's no peer around the world. 世界無敵 in Cantonese, okay? If you look at those 2, okay? So it's still true. It's even more true today. Now, of course, there are challenges. Hong Kong and Great Bay Area, there's still 2 systems. There's a border, whether it's psychological or real, is still there. But in particular, the Western view of Hong Kong has changed. You know, I talk to many people, you know, they think there's no difference between Hong Kong and the rest of, you know, mainland China. And this is a major challenge for Hong Kong, I think. You have to go out. And there's competition for Hong Kong, Shanghai and Singapore and so on. Now, the last one I want to say is the opportunities. There's every challenge there are opportunities, okay? Hong Kong has diversified from finance, real estate, tourism, and so on. Last week, I was in Hong Kong, this One Earth Summit, very global, sustainability, great potential for Hong Kong. So one last thing I want to leave with you. I study in the Bay Area. So I've watched how San Francisco has evolved. So San Francisco was like Hong Kong. It was a financial center, tourism center. It has nothing to do with Silicon Valley. When I was a student, San Francisco was no Silicon Valley. Today is very different because the people who work in Silicon Valley, like in Google, they want to live in San Francisco. But when they live there, if they want to leave the Googles of the world and they want to start up their own company. They don't want to move to the suburb. They want to live in San Francisco and start their company there. So Hong Kong has a unique advantage. And I visited Berlin when the wall was coming down. So if you go to Berlin now, you didn't know the wall was there. Okay, so a wall, a border can be taken down if you put your effort to it. And Middle East is a great opportunity. So I invite all of you to come to Hong Kong, to the Middle East. So that's the end of my talk. Can I have just 15 seconds, okay? I was sitting here and listen, you know, the way we pronounce our names, Hong Kong people, is so out of date. So our undersecretary, right? I know him before. His name is not Zheng Mingqi, okay? It's Xi Guanming. You know, that's his name. So my name is not Fan Chong Chan, okay? My name is Chen Fan Chang, you know, for those who don't speak it, that's the name. So either you know or you don't. So I think now we are, more than 20 years, 25 years after 1997. So we should speak our own local language. I urge everybody who is there to adopt this. Thank you very much.
鍾意名家分析，記得俾 like 同埋分享，支持同訂閱卓見名家，最緊要撳埋呢個鐘仔，咁就唔會錯過我哋嘅新片。